joining us on YouTube. As I mentioned during the readings, today's theme is flexibility. Flexibility. And the definition of flexibility is the quality of bending easily without breaking. When I think about that definition, I think about trees in a storm. Some trees have amazing flexibility. They have a lot of bend to them as they go through high winds. And the more flexible they are, the less chance that they're going to end up with pieces on the ground or broken in two, right? And another thing that comes to mind when I think of being flexible is Gumby. And for those of you who don't know, Gumby was a cartoon character that was created in the 1950s and was still a thing when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. It was like the first claymation type animation. Gumby is a blocky humanoid figure made of clay, and he would stretch all over the place. And he also had a fun orange sidekick horse named Pokey, also clay. So I brought Gumby today to remind us about flexibility. And I was not planning to wear Gumby green this morning either. I came downstairs, I was like, oh my gosh, I dressed like Gumby this morning. Hey. So a more recent flexible pop culture sensation might be Elastigirl, who is the character in Pixar's The Incredibles franchise. I'll just put Gumby there for now. To most of the world, she's known as Helen, but her alter ego is Elastigirl, a superhero with superhuman elasticity, with the ability to stretch and contort her body to extreme lengths and shapes. Of course, that's how she fights evil, right? So both of these characters model flexibility. But if we want an everyday reminder, all we have to do is find a rubber band, right? You should have gotten a rubber band when you came in. So the thicker ones especially have great strength as well as flexibility. There's a lot of give here. And I will mention that sometimes if rubber bands sit for a really long time, they get dry rotted, right? And you go to stretch them and they break. So that's just a reminder to me that we need to keep our flexibility in shape. We have to keep practicing all of our spiritual practices and things like that to keep ourselves from dry rotting. So, whenever you see a rubber band, or you can put it somewhere, put it in your pocket, allow it to be a touchstone this week of reminding us about flexibility. Because I don't know about you, sometimes I can be pretty rigid. I can be set in my ways. Life requires us to be flexible because if we aren't, we can break. Now, being flexible doesn't mean allowing everything and anything. We still live our lives based around our values and beliefs, but being flexible will allow us to have stronger relationships along with growing and stretching in ways that will increase the quality of and meaning in our lives. This past week, I went to the stretch zone in Wyomissing for the first time. Has anyone else been to the stretch zone? All right, I got a taker back here. All right, so it was a free 30-minute consult, so I figured why not? And no, this is not a commercial for them. They literally strap you to a table and an associate contorts your body and stretches it out. And I told my 15-year-old daughter about it and she wasn't impressed. She just rolled her eyes and said, "You can do that yourself." I mean, she's not wrong, but like I told her, but I won't. So I just wanted to see what it was all about. And I thought it might be helpful in increasing my flexibility. I'm not gonna lie, it was painful to be stretched. My hips felt it the next day. And I'm guessing that if I did this on a regular basis, my body would adapt and I would progress with my flexibility. But I will say after only one session, I did feel more open, like I had slightly larger range of motion. So think of the possibilities there. Not only physical, but mental, emotional, and spiritual flexibility. So what might each of these look like? Another definition of flexibility is the capability to adapt to new, changing, or different requirements. Mentally, we can look at this as flexible thinking versus stuck thinking. Okay? Adjusting thoughts and actions when situations change, when something we aren't expecting arises. It can be thinking in different ways. Flexible thinking requires a degree of creativity because, let's face it, life has its fair share of disappointment. And it's okay to feel that, but not to get stuck there. Flexible thinking can help us to cope and navigate the circumstances and life in general. Emotional flexibility is about acknowledging our feelings, to feel and express them, and then react in accordance to the situation. Then we can pivot, we can adapt, right? We can accept these changes and work from there for next steps. It's making the best out of an unexpected shift in what we had planned. Emotional and mental flexibility is the ability to adapt our thinking and behaviors to the circumstances of the moment. It requires being open and letting go of rigid expectations and beliefs about ourselves, about others, and the world. Being flexible mentally and emotionally means being willing to consider a different perspective and to allow our understanding of a situation to change based on openness to new information that we may not have previously considered. To be mentally and emotionally flexible is crucial for building good mental health and positive relationships. It allows for greater problem solving when things do go wrong, and it enhances our ability to adapt. There is one big thing that hinders our ability to be flexible in these ways, and that is fear. Specifically, fear in the form of two types of anxiety, the two C's, catastrophizing and control. The first one, catastrophizing, involves creating fear-based stories of future outcomes, which then we feel compelled to worry about in an effort to protect us from those outcomes, right? When we're catastrophizing, our mind is rigidly focused only on potentially bad or undesired outcomes. Introducing mental flexibility can allow us to consider potential good outcomes as well. So what I want you to take from this is instead of only asking ourselves what could go wrong, we can also focus on what could go right. What could go right? Because life is not just about negative things. There's plenty of positive things. There's plenty to be grateful for, and adaptability is being flexible, right? So another shift toward emotional flexibility is to change our thinking from what if to even if. From what if to even if. When our thoughts are focused on what if, the implication and outcome is fear-based. But when we consider even if, we tap into our resourcefulness because we have resourcefulness within us, the ability to cope, even if something bad happens and things do go wrong. The second barrier to flexibility can be control. Anxiety stemming from control is characterized by rigid behavior and thinking in an effort to create an internal sense of safety, because that's innate to all of us. We might attempt to control our environment to the greatest extent possible. The unconscious thought pattern behind this is if we know what to expect, if things happen the way we think they should, then we will be okay. This therefore leads to rigid expectations of how things should be done, creating the belief that there is a right way to do things and everything else is the wrong way, which encourages perfectionism. Flexibility means being open to the idea that there are many ways to achieve a desired outcome, or many paths to the same result. This requires a willingness to let go, both of how something gets done and by whom. When we are willing to allow a task to be done differently than we would do it, and still trust that we can arrive at the same desired outcome, this relaxes and often self-imposed demands placed upon us by ourselves. It also allows for greater possibilities of someone other than us being able to do it. Letting go, another level of letting go. And letting go reduces stress and burdens, and who doesn't want that? Another form of anxiety stemming from control is the need to anticipate everything that can go wrong in order to have a plan ready for what we'll do if that bad outcome happens. I think a lot of us can identify with this. I see some head nodding, right? We're trying to figure out, how can I possibly make sure that I'm ready if this goes wrong, or this goes wrong, or this goes wrong. And there is a difference between planning and being well prepared, which is obviously fine, and overdoing that to the point where it's compulsive. That's what we're talking about here. So the problem with this strategy is that we'll never be able to adequately predict what will go wrong or anticipate all the details necessary for problem solving when things do go wrong. So to be emotionally flexible is to trust that when things go wrong, we possess the ability to adapt and adjust in order to meet the challenge of the moment. And this trust eliminates the compulsion to problem solve in advance. Speaking of trust, let's think about spiritual flexibility. In order to be spiritually flexible, we need to be willing to completely trust our higher power. Because without that, we are ultimately relying on ourselves. And trust is a difficult thing, and it takes time to build, for sure. But with a foundation of trust in our higher power, we can do our part, but let go of the outcome. Let me say that again. With a foundation of trust in our higher power, we can do our part, but let go of the outcome, relying on higher power's guidance and wisdom. Spiritual flexibility requires adaptability, surrender, acceptance, and openness to change. For example, if I'm driving somewhere unfamiliar, using my GPS, and I miss my turn because it probably said turn in 300 feet and I don't know how far that is. Instead of getting frustrated, I can say, maybe I wasn't supposed to go that way in this moment, and I can go on my way knowing my GPS will take me on another route. It's the same idea with open and closed doors in our lives. When we keep pushing to do something and doors keep closing, not allowing that to happen, we can trust that our higher power will open the door if that's the door for us and if it's the right time. If not, we trust that another door will present itself. Resistance to our higher power and pushing our own agenda will not end well. Ask me how I know. God will continue to steer us in another direction, and soon we will realize that and surrender to it. The sooner we do that, the easier our life will become. I wanted to be a veterinarian since I was 9 years old. I went through high school with a plan to get into a good college that would get me into vet school. I picked an undergraduate school that had good stats of getting their students into veterinary school. I did everything right. I had good grades, I had extracurriculars, I had letters of recommendation, I had hours in the field, decent standardized test scores. I applied to vet school 2 years in a row and could not get in despite all of that. After I got denied the first time, I even moved to a state that had a vet school to gain residence, which would increase my chances of acceptance. That move did score me an interview that second year, but to no avail. I was determined that this was my path in life, but it simply wasn't. I tried every way I knew how, and nothing worked. It wasn't happening, and I was angry. I had worked so hard. I had no plan B. But ultimately, I had to let go of that dream. The dream I had spent my young life building. It took a hot minute to do that. And while those next few years were very difficult, I am grateful for the lessons learned early in my life. God kept shutting door after door after door, and I kept pushing and pushing and resisting. I kept using all of my energy into trying to pry open that door that wasn't for me. That lesson helped me in so many situations in my life after that, and also led me to where I am standing right now, right where God wants me. I still have a lot of work to do, but I've learned to be more flexible and to trust God's guidance. Life is a lot easier that way, when I'm not in charge. So no matter what type of flexibility we're talking about, physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, fear causes us to become rigid, and rigidity is the death of all things. We are looking to stretch and grow and make the most of this precious life we have been given, not to spend our time on this earth a slave to fear. While I acknowledge this is easier said than done, with much work to be done around our own issues, because we all got them, reminders are helpful, and self-awareness is the first step. So let's do an exercise to help demonstrate this. You may have heard the term white-knuckling it in recovery. This is when a person is sober, but only through their own sheer willpower. They aren't using the tools of recovery for support. Surprisingly, people can white-knuckle their recovery for quite some time. But it's the hard way, which eventually ends in relapse. Recovery is hard enough even when we are using the tools. When we're operating out of fear, it's white-knuckling it. I think of white-knuckling it in another sense, like when I'm driving in heavy rain on the highway with 18-wheelers spraying water everywhere. People driving too fast or too slow all around me. Poor visibility, loud rain pounding on my car, inches of water laying on the highway, increasing my chances of hydroplaning. In these circumstances, I have both hands on the wheel, and my knuckles are indeed white with my tight grip. My fear is heightened. My knuckles are white in this stressful situation. Fear invites rigidity, which is why rigid thinking and behavior often accompany anxiety. Contraction and white-knuckling it also apply to uncomfortable feelings. With that rigidity and tightness, we're also gripping onto discomfort and fear. So let's try to feel the difference in our bodies between white-knuckling fear and flexible openness. So right now, I want you to ball up your fists as tight as you can and tense up your arms and your hands and have your hands in a fist Squeeze as tight as you can. You may even find yourself holding your breath. Not only doesn't this feel good, it uses a lot of energy, doesn't it? Now I want you to release that tension and outstretch your arms and open your body. Take a deep breath. Notice the vast difference in your energy, in your body, in your mindset. Open flexibility. Our bodies, minds, and spirits are connected. We can't separate them or compartmentalize them. With practice and by fostering openness and flexibility in these realms of our lives, we will be able to more easily move from fear and rigidity to calm and flexibility. May it be so. Amen.